Hi there, this is Chuck with Pocket Snakes. Today I'm going to show you how to build some braided tapered aramid crackers. So I make these. This is a 10 pack of crackers. I'm going to build another 10. I thought I'd record it. They're a bit of a pain to build, but they're a neat cracker that is long lasting. The fact that they're tapered means that the area that is doubled. So this is a single layer of the braided aramid. So this is a 400-pound strength cord that's braided. I think it's an 8-plate round cord that's hollow. And this piece is a double cubit, or about 3 feet. So that's how I measure and cut these. And half of the area is doubled, so like 6 inches roughly is doubled up. So it makes it so that the crackers are about 1 foot long, but the first 6 inches is double thickness. So the overhand knots tend not to get thrown into the area up front. It kind of acts like a falls and a cracker. So you'll need a pair of shears. These are X shears. They're not a sponsor or anything. I bought these. They're fantastic shears for cutting through Kevlar. This is a Tandy small needle that's been screwed on to it's an internally threaded needle that I've sharpened on the end down, so it's not got the normal head. And this piece of whipmaker cord. And this is a 3mm needle with a piece of scrap of cord on it. So the way you make one of these crackers, and I make them in pairs, is I like to Brummel splice these, Brummel lock them. So I measure out 6 inches, and that's right at 6 inches. And you take the needle and you pierce halfway. You go all the way through in this, but you're piercing the middle of that cord. And then you take the far end of the cord and you open up the bottom of it. And then you kind of slide the cord in and you kind of twist it a little bit so that the fuzzies go inside. And then you pull it through. And I like to pull it up and match it in length to whatever I'm doing. That makes it a matched pair of these guys. And then right where that one comes through, I'm going to pierce it. Right through the center of the cord. I'm going to pull it down to a loop. And we're going to take this loop and we're going to fold it. Push it inside the tube a little bit. We're going to pull that bubble through. So now you have a cord that has two, and both of these loops are kind of cinching loops. And so this is a Starbucks straw because it'll help hold the eye open. And pulled from the loop end, when you pull this, it just tries to cinch down on the straw. So that's how you know you've got both of them run through correctly. And then I took some medication for my asthma, so I've gotten jittery, which is weird. I hate using an inhaler, but occasionally I do. So I'm pierced into the center core of this 400-pound aramid or para-aramid. It's similar to Kevlar. It's a non-name brand version of the same basic chemical fiber. But it's para-aramid. And so this 400-pound cordage you can get on twine line or twin line. They sell kite, fancy kite string for high performance kites and cords. And this is a 400-pound aramid cord that you can buy from them. And it's like, I don't know, 80, 90 bucks for a pound of this cord. It's a decent sized spool usually. Or you can buy smaller quantities. It's a little more expensive because you got to buy you're basically paying, the difference is not the cord price so much, but it's the price where it costs to spool it up and the cost for the spool, because spools aren't free. Okay, so I pulled the little tail through, and then you kind of seat this. Make sure that you've got the Longberry part of that Brummel locked loop. And you'll notice I pulled it through enough so you can see this area is wider than this area. And it's about half the length. And I'm going to do the same on the other side. And it takes a while to get proficient at getting into the center of the cord and then running it down in the middle without catching a lot of side fibers or coming out the side. So you kind of want to just keep the cord straight because you're pushing something straight through the middle. It bounces off the bundles of fibers as it goes. Come out the side. So this is over 6 inches long for what it's worth. Okay. Take the end. When it's all floofy like this, you kind of roll it a little bit. Open up the hole, stick it in. Kind of giving it a little bit of a twist. So I've got about a quarter inch inside of the tube. Just pull it through. You'll see it pop out the side. And you can see the nature of that splice. So you want to make sure and then pull it on through. And so because you've got them both, those two are now standing ends or loops that won't collapse on themselves. And this goes along for, about 6 inches. And then this is more like 7 and 4. And you can see the nature of how much stiffer this area is than the bottom. I lock this pair because I make them in pairs, because if you're using them on pairs of whips, you want them the same length. And then this person ordered them feathered, so I'm going to open up the feathers. So I use from the joint on my thumb to the tip of my thumb. It's a couple inches. This is a 3.5 inch long needle, so. And I'll open up and go in the center of the braid and just feather the feather. Now, each of the bundles of 8 are actually double fibers. So it's woven as an 8 plate, but each of the fiber bundles is actually a bundle of 2 yarns. So you'll see, like this is a pair of yarns, but that's one of the 8 bundles. And I'll peel one bundle of fibers out, and I'll make a tie it off against the stem as a half hitch against the stem. And I'll grab another single yarn, and I'll tie it off as a half hitch against the stem. So that gives you a couple inches of feathers. Notice if I put the bump where I tied it off, this is longer than the amount I started by 10%, 15%, something like that. And it's cheaper if you buy them and feather them yourself, because I don't have to take the time to set and feather these, although this material is fairly simple to feather. So I make these in 5 pairs, so you end up with 10 crackers, but you have 5 matched pairs that are identical, or as close to identical as I know how to make them. I know that they're the same length because they're both tied to the straw, and I find the center. And so I'm trying to separate these. Like, I'm always breaking my thumbnails off and braiding because I end up fatiguing the tips of my nails, and then you clip them back. So there is the first matched pair of crackers. And you can measure off against other things to get your 6-inch measurement. You can use a ruler. You can mark these if you want. But my goal is to have both sides have the same amount inside. That way they weigh the same amount, they move the same amount, have the same bend pattern. Probably doesn't matter to most people, but I try and make things as consistently as I can. But these are all hand done from machine woven cables. So there's lots of ways to do the same thing. This is my tapered braided. I called them Snapdragon Crackers because they were crackers that were a snap to install. And the very first whips that I made them for were fire whips. So and you know, I spent a lot of time trying to source materials to optimize these crackers. And so people may ask why I don't try using this big needle. Well, if you try and open up this braid and go through in the middle with this 3mm cord, you can't push it over this 3mm needle. It just won't go. And so that's why I have the other that's why I have the smaller needle, is because it's the only size that'll really go inside of this cord. Now, it's not true with the other cords. Some of the other cords I can use the 3mm needle. This needle's about 1/16 of an inch in diameter. So it's 1.5 millimeters or so. in diameter, a couple millimeters. And you'll notice that I've got a section of this, and I keep cutting off the fray bits on this cord, and it's so that it pulls smoothly. Nope. I have apparently captured and gone through a fiber instead of between two fibers. So I'm going to unscrew the needle, or try to. And so sometimes when the cord doesn't want to do what you want, it wants to grab and fight you, you just let the needle grab what it wants to grab, and you trim off the stray fur and keep using it, and it ends up tattering and it still works. So it's faster than fighting it, in my estimation. Now, you don't have to sharpen the needle to do this. You can use the standard Tandy's small Permalock needle to do this job. But sometimes it's nice to have the needle sharper because it's easier to get in there, and sometimes you split a pair and it snags on you and you're fighting something that you didn't need to be fighting in the first place. So anyway, a lot of this stuff has taken me a lot of hours to figure out how to make these. And you can see, if you look at the length of this video, to make 10 of these crackers, it's not, the amount of time it takes is more than doing something simple. But these crackers have some advantages. And so if you're a stage performer, that loop won't collapse on its own, which means if you put it on another eye that can't come apart or can't collapse, you have a union for the cracker so that it can't launch into the audience at Mach 1 until it breaks unless it breaks the end off. And so it's a better way of attaching a cracker to a falls. It doesn't tend to throw as many knots because it's got the doubled section. On shorter whips, it can replace a falls where you might want to have a falls. It pushes the wear further down into the cracker or towards the feathers so that the wear and tear on the whip is further down the whip, which is part of the point of having a falls and a cracker. So I don't cut the whip maker cord off typically. These are the scraps of whip maker cord from making whips, so I don't cut these just for this purpose. But if I wasn't using the material to make whips, I'd probably just trim off little pieces. cut this Kevlar kind of okay with regular scissors, but you'll dull the regular scissors quickly. And these X shears are made for paramedics kits, doctors, emergency room places. And these are the best pair of shears I've ever had. They keep cutting the Kevlar. You know, I don't cut I have scissors that I'll cut leather with, but if you have to cut Kevlar, you don't want to dull your pair of shears on the Kevlar and then go try and cut something, because you'll be unhappy with the end result. Half inch against the stem. Some cracker materials will self-tangle. These Kevlar, the weave is pretty simple, and so it comes undone, and the fibers tend to be a little springier than other materials, and they're not coated. This para-aramid is uncoated, so it doesn't stick to itself. So once it starts untangling, it just does a real quick job of coming apart. And you could just tie an overhand knot in these, or a figure-8 knot, but the place where you tie it creates quite a bump, and if it comes back and hits you, it's likely to tear your skin or injure you. So if you take the time to put half hitches, a pair of half hitches at least, you will have the ability to have the smallest possible stop knot for the fray, and the least impact if it comes back and hits you, or if you hit somebody's hand that's holding a flower as you're trying to cut the flower off. Also, it doesn't create a fatigue point where it breaks off there as often as if you have a figure-8 knot or another knot. Plus, this cracker ends up being slightly louder because it doesn't have an increase in diameter as it goes down. So now we're at 4. Anyway, so I make this kind of cracker out of 400-pound strength aramid. There's another fiber called Technora that's an aramid, that's a coated aramid. It's spinneret coated. When they spin the fibers out, they coat it in a color like black. It's the same basic fiber, very fire resistant, fireproof, you know. I make the same thing out of ultra-high molecular weight polyethylene, which is a mouthful to say, so people say HPME or UW, ultra-high weight UHWMPE. It's polyethylene fiber. It's got a couple brand names like Spectra, which is usually white in color. Dyneema is another brand name of ultra-high molecular weight polyethylene, which is actually, it's another fiber similar to the aramids. It's stronger than the aramids and makes beautiful crackers. Ultra-high molecular weight polyethylene is a generic term, much like para-aramid instead of Kevlar. And I also have Vectran, which is the world's only commercially available monocrystalline fiber. So from the end of the spinneret, it makes a singular crystal miles long, or whatever length you spin the fiber. So it's a uniform crystal. It's one of the strongest fibers. And I buy it coated in a black, but it turns silver as you work with it. Makes beautiful crackers, kind of expensive material. It's more expensive than aramid. A pound of that material is probably $100 and some, $200. I don't remember, a couple $100. It's twice as expensive as this material. You used to make these out of nylon. You can use the same method with nylon braided mason twine. You can do the same process with that. Of course, the braided mason line will come apart a whole lot faster than the aramid does, or any of the other fibers I've mentioned. You want to set and make these, please make yourself some. You can order some if you like it. You want to support me making my crazy videos and talking about what I do. I do it so that other people become interested in making whips, and maybe they can take an idea I'm using and improve upon it and move the whole craft forward. There's not a ton of people who make whips in the first place, and so it's kind of a small community of people worldwide. The world needs more craftsmen. And most of us that are willing to share information have started off and just brute forced our way through because we're stubborn, not asked anybody for help, and so we have a lot of different ways of doing things. And I try and share my information because it's more about, I think the information itself of how to make things and how to muddle your way through problems is a more valuable skill than the actual skill. How to work through problems, solve things that look impossible. How to go about learning something you have no clue how to learn. And there's generic things you can do to be successful. It doesn't matter what the thing you're trying to learn is. It's kind of like training an AI how to do something. You can go in and try and force it to do something, or you can let it make 100,000 mistakes per millisecond for, so many cycles per processor until it fails its way to success. The willingness to fail at things is more valuable because a lot of people give up they think they're doing poorly or not learning fast enough, or they feel like they're not successful, whatever that means. What is success to you, right? What do you care about? Do you care about the end result? Do you care about just enjoying the process of learning? Like, because if you just care about the learning, you can learn to master all sorts of things. You never played chess before and you're 30 years old, 40 years old, even 50 years old. People are like, well, you can't pick up a new thing like chess and learn it. It's like, well, sure you can. You just have to be willing to lose 10,000 games. And by the end of 1,000 games, you'll be amazed at how much you understand. So there's 6 crackers. I used to worry how long it took me to make these things, because it took me an hour to make 10 of them. And now I'm getting a little bit faster. But every time I change the design of how I go about doing it, I shave some time off or find a better way to lock it down. I used to just do a longberry splice on these. But then if you tie it onto the end of a piece of paracord, then that eye will try and tug the center core out from the center. So it's better to Brummel splice these so that they don't, the loop won't just move. I think I would have enjoyed meeting the guy that invented the Brummel splice back forever ago, because he was probably quite a sailor who figured out how to splice braided line that way. This is probably technically a half Brummel splice, but it does the same job basically. So I'm calling it a Brummel splice. I thought I came up with a cool idea, and I started looking to see, wonder if anybody else has ever done this. Oh yeah, of course. There's nothing new under the sun, as they say. And even though I'm doing a really small Brummel splice on these, somewhere I've got to find. One of the problems with this cord is trying to stay in the center of it. If you have a sharp needle, if you hear it scraping or feel it scraping, it's going to make it harder to pull the sheath through. So you can get bound up. You can cause yourself a lot of extra work. Although, the more you do of anything, the faster you should be able to do some of it. I've never cared much about the speed I go about doing stuff. I've cared more about trying to keep the quality to where it doesn't drive me nuts, and that everything is as uniform as can be and is repeatable from cracker to cracker. But I don't think I've ever shown this Brummel splice in this size cord before, because it takes some special needles, and you have to go, I mean, it's not an expensive needle. Every Tandy leather store, or you can get online and order a Tandy small, throw it in a drill and sand it down to make your own needle for this. And you don't need this needle for 400-pound line of different types, but this aramid, this 400-pound aramid requires this size needle. You know, you can't make it with a 3mm needle. So, but the biggest secret is putting a piece of cord of hollow whipmaker cord, which is smaller than paracord, behind the needle so that you can just tuck the tail, because like it's not possible to pull a folded cord through this cord. It's not possible to melt the end of aramid, because you get it hot and it will turn to a gas from a solid. It won't reach a melted state except under pressure. So it sublimates, boils off from a solid to a gas, leaving ash. See if I can show you that real quick. You know, if you have a torch that's really hot, you can see it light up when you touch it, but there's no bumps. It doesn't. Will it burn? Yeah, you can burn it, but will it stay alight? No. It makes an okay wick. People use Kevlar as a wick, but there's no way to toast the fibers and weave them through, because you can screw it in, because you can't form a cone to stick it in the needle, so you have to have another way of doing it. I don't know. I think a lot of the materials are cool. I think Kevlar and aramids have been around since the 1960s, before I was born. 1960 is a long time ago. I think the ultra-high molecular weight polyethylene probably came out in the 70s, early 70s. So Vectran, I think it came around in the 80s or 90s as a brand name for a fiber. So I tend to use half hitches against the stem of the cracker, because it's the smallest knot, and I'm accident prone when I'm throwing a whip. If I whack myself in the face, that little knot there is padded by the base of the feather, so if it whacks you, it generally doesn't hurt you. So it just makes the product a little bit safer, and every little bit of safety you can put in something is an improvement that most people would never notice, but if it saves one person's skin in some way, it saves you from getting a scar, ripping your ear, whatever, while you're out playing with your whip. Not that playing with whips is an inherently safe activity. There's 8 crackers, and now for the final 2. So anyway, if you're still with me, please make sure you like, share, subscribe. If you want to find my Linktree site for all of my social media stuff, go to QRTRK. That's QRTrack, QRTRK.us/pocketsnakes. And you can find the latest. Oh, there's Facebook and Instagram. If you're watching this, you'll be probably on YouTube. I have stuff copied over, I think, to BitChute, which is another video platform. But if you want a link to all my stuff and so you can get in contact with me, my phone number and all the links to stuff and email and websites and all that stuff is qrtrk.us/pocketsnakes. Sometimes the hardest thing is pulling the doubled cord through the little hole. Not going to need that needle again. So, and the soda straw just leaves a really nice size for cracker installation. I used to use a Bic pin. Then I'd find pin markings all over my shirts, and since a lot of the shirts you see me wear are silk, that's a problem. Even the dry cleaning fluid doesn't like taking pin marks out, so found a soda straw. You kind of have to inchworm this material on. Gotta move the needle and try and keep the thing you're pushing it into as straight as you can. So, even if you just need sources or materials, you're welcome to contact me, pocketsnakes@pocketsnakes.com. I'm happy to email back and forth and share information with you. You can use the same technique to make eyeglass holders and all sorts of things, where you have two loops. Just depends on what you need to do. There's a lot of error proofing in this, so I don't have to think too hard about this. And the end result is super consistent, which is what I'm after. So. Anyway. When you're feathering this way and you have a round cord that's hollow, you kind of want a blunt needle, not a sharp one, because you don't want to split the fibers. You want to split the, you want to open the braid up without catching the fibers themselves. Because if you get in between a fiber bundle, and it'll drag and it'll turn fuzzy. And the fuzzy is okay once you're throwing the whip, but it makes it hard to grab a single bundle of fibers. So people ask how I bundle these things up, and I make them in pairs. I sell them as 10 packs. And they're a bit of a pain to make, but if you want to take, I don't know, it's been 45 minutes or so of me doing this while I'm talking. I'm a little bit faster, especially if I don't make any errors. But it takes quite a bit of time to set and feather these. If you're willing to take the time to feather them, I sell them less expensive than if they're feathered. So when you get to the end of, so now we have 5 pairs. Line up all the square knots. Tie an overhand knot. And then you just loop the tails. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. There you go. There's a 10 pack of crackers, just like this 10 pack of crackers. And these are headed out. I think these packs are headed to Australia. But people from all over the world find the website, and thank you for watching the videos. I'm always honored and amazed that anybody takes the time out of their day to watch me do the fun things I like to do. And if you need a really good pair of scissors for cutting spectra fibers or almost anything, you can cut leather or anything else. These are X shears, and they have quite an edge on them. You can see I touch up the beveled edge occasionally with a little stone, a little round stone, diamond stone, but literally they're serrated. They'll cut through almost anything. I've been impressed with these. They're 40 some bucks. Best shears I've used. They're probably 1/8 of an inch thick of steel. Anyway, this is Chuck with Pocket Snakes. You have yourself a wonderful, wonderful day, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.